Finebaum show. It's not Jerry Springer, right?
Oh, sometimes it does turn into a little Jerry Springer. Hi, hello, I am Peter Burns, filling in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, who gets a well-deserved day or two off after being the hardest working man in all of show business all throughout this football season. We got a lot of things to get into, including, of course, your phone calls, 855-242-PAUL. Always great when I host is an opportunity to get some new blood in on the calls and develop some new legends. We'll get into that, but let's go ahead and get into our headlines right off the bat because it's crazy in basketball because now we're starting to get into college hoop season, and sure enough, Jermaine Couisnard, South Carolina, redshirt freshman, he did this in Columbia to shock the Wildcats.
4.1 seconds left, we're tied up. Couisnard, pull up three, good if it goes, he got it! He baked it in! Unreal shot by Jermaine Couisnard! And the Gamecocks have taken down Kentucky.
Love it. Part of the chaos, and this was one of the things that we're talking about SEC basketball as we start moving on towards football season, and you need upsets like this. You need upsets to kind of keep the blood boiling and get it going, and Couisnard was fantastic. He ends up having 26 points on the night. Sold out arena. Only the 16th time ever in Colonial Life Arena they had a sellout, and he gave one for the ages. And it's not only that game that was wild on a Wednesday night. We had more upsets that kept rolling, including the one where I know Finebaum fans knew about it. Alabama hands Auburn its first loss of the season. By the way, it wasn't just a whipping. It was a good old-fashioned whooping. There's a difference. When it's an O, couple of O's instead of an I, a whooping instead of a whipping, that's a different level. And it just always made for a strange season in what we've seen so far. Take a look at this. AP top 10 teams so far this season. 22 losses to unranked teams. Most in AP poll history. I mean, the poll's been going on for almost 60 some odd years, and this is the most that we have had. Now, we're going to be joined by Nate Oates a little bit later in the program, and Jermaine Couisnard, who had the game winner for South Carolina as well. But this is starting to kind of round into what I think is going to be the best college basketball seasons we've had in a long time. Not just here in the SEC, which I think is wide open, with Auburn getting its first loss and Alabama starting to play a little bit better, but just college basketball in general. I think there's been 5 different teams that have been number one, have been knocked off their perch. So it's kind of like that, what if your team gets hot, like South Carolina did a couple of years ago and made it to the Final Four, or like Tennessee has had in a couple last years as well, even the Auburn Tigers. So anything is possible, and I'm looking forward to that because guess what? You could be a team that comes out of nowhere and wins the national championship, and that is like the LSU Tigers. And, of course, what a crazy couple of weeks it has been. And now for LSU, we've got some news and some hype. Let's get into the news. Adam Rittenberg, ESPN, he says his sources, LSU defensive coordinator Dave Aranda, leading candidate to become Baylor's next head coach. Deal could be done soon. Of course, Aranda was the D coordinator that really kind of stepped it up with his team. One of the reasons why he kept Clemson in the ball game, or against the Tigers in that ball game against Clemson early. They ultimately go on, of course, and win the national title. But that's not the only headline coming up from LSU is, will Aranda be at the White House? LSU football team, I just talked to some of their staffers a couple of minutes ago, and I said, what are you guys doing right now? And he goes, we're legitimately walking on the bus to get on a plane and head up north. The LSU football team headed to the White House Friday. They're going to be celebrating their national championship win. So award season continues. So Aranda is news. Cool thing to go to the White House, and then this drops. Arrest warrant issued for Odell Beckham Jr. after video shows locker room butt slap. Just want to make sure I had an emphasis on that last one. The locker room butt slap. There's a ton of different things to get into about it, and let's work backwards here on the Odell Beckham Jr. thing. This is not ultimately going to hurt LSU. LSU is going to do the right thing with compliance. The money's going to be returned. It won't be an issue. It's really not going to hurt Odell Beckham Jr., right? Even though his name gets all of these headlines, he still loves the headlines. That's the whole reason why he was acting the fool all week long during that lead up to the game. So it really doesn't hurt Odell because can he catch the ball in the NFL? He can. That's why he makes a whole lot of money. Actually, what it's going to hurt is if I'm an NFL player that wants access to my college team, That's probably why you're going to be upset with Odell Beckham Jr., because they're going to look at guys like Odell Beckham Jr. having all of this deal, right? The butt slap, which leads to the battery charge, and then now the paying the players, which of course the money's going to be returned. All of that is what's going to cause the next time Derrick Henry wants to show up on a sideline or any other player. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, we've had issues before. And that's something that needs to be rectified. So if you're an NFL football player and you want to go to a college game and have great access and you don't get it, you need to blame OBJ. A lot of your phone calls coming up, 855-242-PAUL. Let's take a look at the guests that we're going to have over the next couple of hours here on the show, because we got some good ones coming up. Nate Oates, wonder if he's going to be wearing the hard hat or maybe eating a Nate dog. That's the new things over at Alabama football, or basketball, rather. He'll be here at 3:30 Eastern. Pat Forty will join us over at 4:30. Talk about the way too early, but never too early, top 25 for next year. And Bob Hebert, 5 p.m. at Eastern, ESPN Radio. He's been having fun. I wonder if he still has a little bit of a voice left after those last couple of days. All right, let's go in and take your phone calls right now. Let's go Louisiana Dan. Welcome into the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Louisiana Dan?
Hey, Peter Burns. Best host for this time right now. A homer. I'm glad to talk to you.
It's good to be an LSU fan. I will say that in the least. What do you got for me, Dan?
Well, one question. I'd heard that, a couple really, but Joe Moorhead, they're saying it's going to have been talking about being an offensive coordinator at LSU. Have you heard that?
No. In fact, the latest thing, if I'm not mistaken, I need to get confirmation, is that Joe Moorhead was going to head up to Oregon as the OC. But, of course, I've been in kind of the LSU haze for the last couple of days trying to get out from under that, and flight issues as well, too. So I don't see that being the future.
Did you hear that?
I know that was one of the rumors with Joe Brady, of course, being hired by the Carolina Panthers, and that they're going to be losing him. But, no, Joe Moorhead will not be the offensive coordinator for the LSU Tigers coming up next year, Dan.
Right. Well, that's okay. Peter, I have to brag on LSU's defense. A lot of people are saying they're one of the best teams ever, and the defense is what is lacking. But, wow, the last 4 games, and actually after Bama, they were lights out on defense.
Dan, to ask for that, the last thing here, and thank you so much for the phone call, Dan. I know as you're still recovering from that excitement of LSU winning the national championship. It was a couple of different things. The best thing that could have happened to LSU this season, outside of Joe Burrow and Joe Brady coming together, was the fact when Rob Mullins looked into the camera and said, "You are not the best team in the country. You are not the most complete team in the country." That lit a different fire under LSU. And, of course, the numbers were incredible for LSU. There's no doubt about it, and it's going to go down as one of the greatest seasons in college football history with Burrow and Brady and Ensminger and that whole cast. But without LSU's defense really stepping up in the first 15 minutes of that ball game, then I don't know if LSU gets so far into a hole that they're not able to come back. The fact that they were able to hold Trevor Lawrence to some early punts and just minimize it to a field goal here and there, I'm looking at Chris Story and saying that should have been 21-0, 28-0 right off the bat. But LSU did enough to kind of say, hey, calm, right, chill out. We'll go ahead and tread water. And sure enough, Joe Burrow started making those adjustments, and the rest is history. Dan, thanks so much for the phone call, man. I appreciate it, and go enjoy the LSU Tigers parade in a couple of days. Let's go, Andre in Atlanta. Welcome into the Paul Finebaum Show with Peter Burns. What's happening, Andre?
Peter, where are you from over there? You from Port Allen, Plaquemine? Where are you?
The other side of the bridge, my man. I am from Port Allen, Louisiana, in the 225. Yes, sir.
Well, I used to work in Plaquemine, but I used to live in Denham. Look, listen, if Paul Finebaum is Coach Finebaum, can we call you the special team coach or the offensive coordinator?
I just call me the guy that holds Finebaum's clipboard, and I'll be fine with that. Like Matt Flynn made a great career of that in the NFL. Paul's a legend. I'll just collect the paycheck and be there when he wants to take a day off or so.
Okay, say it loud. Hold that title. Listen, man, I sure hate that Odell Beckham did what he did. It makes, sports look bad. It makes the SEC, the perception. That's what people think of the conference anyway. And it's like you were stating earlier, this is going to make people think twice about letting former athletes come back to support their alma mater because of what he did. And it just, and I like Odell Beckham, I really do, but it's not about him. It's about the team and the victory and the national championship win. But he made it about himself, and that's just not right, Peter.
Andre, you nailed it, and because this is the one thing about this whole LSU team, and the reason why they won a national championship, it was the team mentality, right? It was Ed Ogeron going, it's not about me, it's about the team. It was Steve Ensminger going, it's not about me or Joe Brady, it's about this offense. Joe Burrow said the same exact thing. And so really it was the actions that were antithesis of what Odell had done, which is the reason why LSU had so much success this year, that it wasn't a me-first mentality. Like Jamar Chase did. Welcome back, Paul Finebaum Show. For those of you watching us over here on SEC Network, I'm Peter Burns, in for Paul. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. We're one of the things, guys, that I really want to get into about the Odell Beckham Jr. thing. It's when I see it, I didn't know how big of a deal it was. Now, I saw it right after the press conference, and people started kind of tweeting this out. But the way that this has taken some legs, Brams and Coobs, this all of a sudden has become the story that lives on for the national championship game, which is unfair, guys.
Completely unfair and unfortunate. I mean, leading into the game, we were talking about LSU. If they beat Clemson, will this be the greatest season? You got the Heisman Trophy winner, the Coach of the Year, and literally everything has been kind of sucked out of it almost immediately. The athletic office had to answer questions. They've had to throw it out. Instead of celebrating
less than 24 hours
and Joe Burrow and having this send-off, people were just focusing on this because, Odell wants it to be about Odell, and so he makes it about that. And it's so frustrating, especially in the SEC West, where finally LSU conquered Alabama, and you went through and you have this great year. And this is what people are talking about a couple days later. Like, as a fan, I mean, is it driving you nuts?
What it does, it upsets me for this reason, right? Is the idea that you should have had all this talk. You should have had 4 or 5 days, heck, 2 weeks of nonstop conversations. The number one team of all time, the number one quarterback of all time, the best head coaching job of all time, the murderer's row that they put in. And what it did now at that point is it basically cut your spotlight in basically in half, really, because now all these articles now have a new angle. And it also proves to another thing is for LSU, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I love that phrase because I think it's so true. For the longest time, Alabama has had to wear that crown where everybody's going to come after you. And there was nothing that was unlikable about this LSU team. I mean, for a lot of reasons, they liked Burrow, they liked Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they liked Ed Ogeron. And when it came down to it, now they have some reason to get upset with the LSU Tigers, fair or not. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum, taking more of your phone calls. We had a crazy hoops night. Nate Oates of Alabama, their head coach, going to join us in a couple of minutes. But let's go back to the phone lines we go. 855-242-PAUL. We'll go to Austin, Louisiana. What's happening, Austin?
How's it going, Peter?
Living the dream, man. What's going on with you?
So I just wanted to take this time to vent on national television. First off, I'm a huge Bama fan. I live right here on the north side of Baton Rouge, so you can imagine the emotional roller coaster that we've been going through as Crimson Tide fate that lives in North Baton Rouge at this time of the year. It's kind of crazy. But first off, I wanted to give a big congrats to the Bama basketball team. Like I said, I'm a Bama follower through and through, not just football. So big shout out to Nate Oates and company on the hardwood. But I really wanted to get into the football aspect of things. A lot of these LSU, faithful are hard on Bama right now. I think it's hilarious that they beat Alabama, a month or so ago, month and a half, 2 months ago, and literally on the north side of Baton Rouge, fireworks shot off. And I was in awe about how big of a win it was to them. And they win the national championship the other night, and you'd have thought around town they had just beaten Texas A&M or Kentucky. No fireworks, no crazy, celebration, at least outside of New Orleans. But I've been trying to tell these people, what Alabama has done over the course of the last decade and a couple of years, even more, 11, 12 years, is so impressive. And they are now fixing to see that. I think LSU is staring an 8-4, 9-3 best next year record right in the face due to the simple fact that They're losing Joe Brady. They're losing Joe Burrow. They're losing 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. They're losing Patrick Queen. They're losing Grant Delpit. They're losing their best receiver. And they're losing all that to the NFL. And they're now fixing to see, in my opinion, how impressive it is exactly what Nick Saban and staff has been able to do over the course of this dynasty that some people think is dead. I think it's still very much alive, as you've seen in the bowl game and what we have coming back. And again, I think it's very impressive what Alabama's done. And I think LSU they're living in a reality right now where it's great, everything's rainbows, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, they're fixing to see exactly how impressive it is that what we're doing at Alabama right now in this dynasty in the football world. They're fixing to see exactly how impressive that is going forward because they win the national championship this year, rightfully so. They're very impressive. But at the end of the day, they're looking at 8-4 dead in the face next year. And Bama hasn't had an 8-win season. They haven't had less than 10 wins in the last 11 years. So, and we've done that by losing offense coordinators, losing Heisman Trophy winners. You can see right now that one of the best running backs in the nation in NFL just came from Alabama. So, I mean, we're losing these guys every year, and we're having replacements at offense coordinator. We're having replacements at defense coordinator, and yet we're still finding a way to be in the conversation to play for a college football national championship every single year. And LSU, I don't believe, is even going to be in that conversation come week 7 or week 8 next year. I think that's what kind of season they're looking at. And just wanted to kind of get that off my chest and see what it is you had to say about that. Thanks.
Austin, I appreciate the phone call. There's a lot to unpack here. And what I want to do right now is that, first of all, if you think the Alabama, quote, dynasty is dead, you're an absolute flat-out idiot. Turn off the television right now. Turn off the radio. Just pull over to the side of the road. Go listen to Yacht Rock or whatever, right? I mean, when people say Alabama's dynasty is dead, they'll be dead when all of a sudden it's a 6-6 season. It's a 7-5 season. That ain't happening down in T-Town anytime soon. So enough. Any person that says the Bama dynasty is dying or dead, then just choose better friends. That's all I'm asking for. The thing is you went back and you talked about how they were popping fireworks when LSU beat Alabama. LSU didn't win the national championship game in the Superdome. Now, they didn't win it back in playing in Oklahoma in the semifinal game. LSU won the national title when they went into Tuscaloosa and they beat Alabama. It was that exorcism that they needed to have. They had to have this put the demons to bed moment. And I vividly remember talking to Ed Ogeron and players and staffers after that game, and the rest of it was gravy. I will never forget walking into the Superdome right before the national championship game on Monday night, and I looked around and said, I don't gamble, but I would put every single Finebaum's dollars of his $75 million he makes a year on LSU in that game, because it was not about the game. Everybody in that building was there for the celebration. The national championship game was won against Alabama. And if you're a Bama fan right now, you should wear that as a feather in your cap. That LSU knew that they were beating Clemson. They knew they just had to beat Alabama to get there. And by the way, the SEC West going to be wide open coming up next season. Let's get another phone call in here. Brent is in Alabama. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Brent?
Hey, Peter. Hey, a couple of days ago I called about OBJ, and I'm pretty sure I was like the first person to talk about it on TV. And I brought up the cash situation, and Paul, he took and just said, I think it's fake money, and just kind of blew me off a little bit. Okay? I almost, I'm sad he's not in today, but I kind of want an apology because, it's huge. The whole story, all the social media is talking about it. It's on every network. It's on every show, and I don't have a problem with college players getting paid. I don't. It's not I'm not taking the moral high ground on this. It's just how stupid do you got to be to do it in front of everybody, and how hungry for attention do you got to be, but anyways.
Well, Brent, that's what it was. And on behalf of Paul, I'll have a proxy apology, is that the first thing that it came out is LSU says, hey, listen, well, this thing might have been fake money. And for those who had seen it, they had no idea. They're trying to figure out what was going on.
Right.
And that was really kind of what was told to everybody, including Paul. So I don't think by any means Paul was calling you an idiot, or no need to really apologize because you're a loyal listener to the show. But I think it was just a matter of what was out there. And then they investigated it, and they realized, all right, no, it was Odell trying to be, get on tele. Odell wanted this, right? This is what Odell wanted. And that's the problem that brings LSU down at this point, because it had been such a great team atmosphere to this point. Why would you have one athlete doing that?
Right.
And again, all it's going to hurt is not Odell, whose star is going to be big because he's a star and actually probably helps right now because he's getting all the headlines. It's not going to hurt LSU compliance related because they're going to fix that issue and all the money is going to be returned. It's just going to hurt the next Odells that want to get in and have this access to celebrate with their teams. Now a lot of teams are going to be like, let's just pump the brakes because we don't want to have this stealing our thunder in case something happens.
Well, I'll accept your apology and tell Paul I love his big juicy ears. I appreciate it. See you.
I love it, Brent. Thanks, man. Hey, we got a lot more of your phone calls coming up. In fact, we're going to open it up a little bit more to your tweets and your phone calls. Is Nate Oates? We're going to push him back another 30 minutes, so he's going to be joining us at 4 Eastern on the heels of his unbelievable win against the Auburn Tigers. Remember, South Carolina defeated Kentucky in a wild, wild season in college hoops so far. Anything you want to talk about? I'm here for you. 855-242-PAUL. That's 855. All of the numbers, 242-7285. Hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN.
Finebaum now. 855-242-7285. That's 855-242-PAUL. This is the Paul Finebaum Show.
All right, welcome back to Paul Finebaum Show. I need help, y'all. I got to be honest with you. Coming in, I was just to the show today. When I knew I was hosting, I'm like, you know what? Here's a good topic. Let's talk about Burrow leaving, Tua leaving. Who are the top 5 returning quarterbacks? I legit, Brams, I want to bring you in on this conversation. Legit looked at this for a good 15 minutes. I can't figure out my top 5. I like legit. I put 75 different names.
Let's work through it. Let's work through it right here, live on the air. What do y'all say?
But I'm fine. I mean, give me a name and let me try to figure this out.
Kellen Mond.
I think Kellen Mond's the chalk.
He's going to have he's got the most passing yards.
Yeah, but
coming in.
Yeah, but again, but so what's so funny? In years past, we've always been like, oh, I mean, it's definitely Tua. Oh, it might be Jared Stidham,
right.
Or I don't even know if we were talking about Joe Burrow before
Jeremy
this
Johnson,
season. Yeah, Jeremy Johnson, everybody's favorite media day Heisman winner. But I don't know. I mean, I go back and look at Kellen Mond, how great were you against LSU when you needed to have it? And you lost 50-7, and you got flat out embarrassed.
All-time LSU team.
But does that speak to the lack of other candidates that we have?
John Rice Plumlee. They're just
John
young.
Rice.
Rice.
Inexperienced. I love John Rice Plumlee.
All right, so you're putting him. I would imagine, and now with Lane Kiffin's offense, you would imagine that he would probably be high on that list.
So we got Plumlee and Mond on the list. I'm going to go with Jamie Newman, the transfer quarterback down in Georgia.
The Wake Forest transfer that comes in. That would be intriguing to me.
Good stats. Two-way player.
But it also depends if Georgia actually can develop an offensive coordinator.
Right,
if Coley can use him properly.
They've got some mental hurdles to get over there, obviously, as well as just the physical.
Yeah, I think with the numbers when he had big games, he was able to, you go back to the Iron Bowl, he was solid. He was solid on the last drive against Auburn. And I think they're going to allow him to do more under Chad Morris. I think Nix has to be in there in the top 5. But again, I need some help. Kyle
Trask. Kyle Trask, I think, has to be in your top 5.
Garantano?
Wow. You could tell Lou's not directing today because that would have been one of the numbers. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. For those of us listening on radio, we just did a TV-only segment, which was give me the top 5 quarterbacks coming into SEC play in 2020. I don't know who the hell it's going to be. I got to be honest with you. Normally, I'll come in here with an opinion. I won't back down from it. I'm trying to look at 1 through 5 next year with Burrow being gone, Tua being gone. How do I rank the top 5 QBs next year? Kellen Mond, John Rice Plumlee, Garantano. I was going to say Felipe Franks, but he's going to be gone. Kyle Trask. Help me do that on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. In the meantime, let's get more of your phone calls right now. Matt is in South Carolina. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for Paul. What's up, Matt?
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Man, doing great, man. Back hosting this show, which is always my favorite thing to do. How you doing?
Yeah, I was actually calling to talk to Paul. I told the guys off air, but you're probably a great candidate to ask because it's a couple of LSU questions. Congratulations on the win, by the way.
Thank you, Matt.
I want to preface it first by saying I'm a Clemson fan, but I try to remove any bias. I don't really have a bias towards LSU, and be objective. With the OBJ stuff, I look at it as just one more, it's a cumulative thing. I was a little shocked, or I don't know the word, but basically when I saw the next song, that was the first kind of saying, "Oh wow, that's kind of interesting." And then the apparel that Joe Burrows wore after the game. I mean, everybody can do their own research for that. And then it was the OBJ thing. So it was kind of cumulative for me. And I don't know a lot about LSU. I followed them. I followed them a little bit under Les Miles. I really like Ed Orgeron. I stayed up after the game, which was surprising for me, about an hour and a half, watching the press conferences, watching them celebrate. Normally, we lose a game like that, I'm probably going to bed.
Yeah.
But I really like Ed Orgeron. Maybe it's the whole interim thing, like Dabo or whatnot. But it's hard not to root for him.
Sure.
There's no denying Joe Burrow's greatness. But I'm a father of two boys, and I can't help. First, I would be ecstatic if my son ever did anything like that. But if I saw him with that apparel, I'd say you got to take that off.
Yeah, and Matt, what you're talking about is a couple of different things. One, obviously, they played neck in the stadium. That's something that LSU has done over the last couple of years, and they refuse to do it over in Tiger Stadium anymore because the student section ends up adding some lyrics to it that are not necessarily safe for work or safe for kids. And it was one of those things. It was a celebration in the fourth quarter. They're like, we're just playing neck, and you know what? It is what it is. I can't say anything about that. As far as,
So the administration is trying to stop it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The administration has, and I don't know if this was a band director gone rogue or whatnot, but the administration says, no, we're not doing that. And a lot of that comes down from Ed Orgeron as well, too. I mean, listen, there was a hat given to Joe Burrow by a fan that had something.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like, hey, he printed out his own hat and he was like, hey, look at what I'm wearing to the camera. This is something that was given to him, and, hey, if a fan does that, he's not going to have an issue with. So, but going back to the Odell deal, too, I think that is just kind of one. I mean, I saw probably 40 different NFL guys or LSU kind of celebrities on the sideline. He's basically the only one I saw acting up. So that's what's so upsetting about the Odell deal is that you had the actions of one that have kind of spoiled it for so many that were doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I don't look at that Odell like a representation of LSU football. I'm looking at a cumulative thing. And I reference, and one of the reasons why I want to talk to Paul is because Paul is so hard on Miami culture. And I, for me, the things I think about is I look, as a Clemson fan, I look back at Florida State under Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
And you had the paintball, you had the standing up in the cafeteria, you had the crab legs, and we see where that culture led. So my question to you as an LSU alumni, and I believe alumni, right? At least, you grew up, you're familiar with the program.
Yeah.
Do you think is this the culture? Because I don't.
Matt, let me go. Let me, and I know the gist that you're talking about. Is this the culture for LSU? And I will tell you this: Jack Mariucci, who is the strength and conditioning, equipment manager guy, and does a lot of stuff for LSU football. He put together kind of a spreadsheet and that lists like the best character. And they came in and talks about the different recruits he's had. And he's come out with this character matrix. And believe it or not, I think a lot of college campuses and a lot of football programs are going to use it because it goes in like, what kind of kid are you recruiting? And he said this class that LSU had in 2017, 2 years ago, was the best he had ever seen at LSU as far as character, as far as guys that want to be a part of the team. And I think that's why this dream season came together. Sure, you're always going to want 5 stars, but sometimes it's better to have a 3-star that actually fits your profile and your program. And I think Ed Orgeron is the first person to admit that, and I think that's why he had success. I ran on because I got to get to the hotline anytime Jim in Tuscaloosa makes a phone call. Jim, Happy New Year, my man. How you doing?
Same to you, Peter. But you know what? I really maybe I'm going to blow your mind by telling you this, but I don't mind telling the truth about things. I didn't even know. I heard a friend of mine. I heard Alabama was going to play Auburn. I said, well, I'm not even going to tune that in because I can't stand to see Alabama get killed on any field, basketball, football, or whatever. I just didn't even think about it. I heard nothing about it today, and then all of a sudden I hear you say I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't. And I called a friend while I was waiting on you, and he said, well, Alabama didn't play. Auburn didn't play great. They missed a lot of free throws, missed a lot of threes. What did they do, Peter? I didn't see it or hear anything.
Jim, the what it is was, first of all, that you had Cairo Lewis kind of step out and become a star. I think that was the one thing. The other thing that was interesting is that I know a lot of Finebaum fans, a lot of just SEC fans go, all right, I'll kind of eventually, I'm in this football malaise, I'll get to basketball eventually. But what it came down to is I think the home court advantage at Coleman Coliseum, which was a game changer, and it's part of the enthusiasm that Nate Oates has brought. We're going to talk to him in 20 minutes here on this show. And Jim, I think that's what kind of shut down Auburn. Auburn was going to eventually lose. I just didn't think that it was going to be to Alabama. And if you remember earlier in SEC basketball media days, it ended up being Anthony Mcelroy who came out and says, I can't wait to see the look of disappointment from the Auburn fans when we win in Alabama. I think that was just a little.
Whoa! Who said that?
Yeah, it was Mcelroy on Auburn's team that said that. Now it was kind of fun. It was flippant. It wasn't him trying to talk all this huge trash. But what it was it's something that Nate Oates and Alabama players remembered. And when it came down to it, it wasn't a whipping. It was a whooping, Jim. And that's why I think you and a lot of people will look at this and go, I need to pay attention to what Nate Oates is bringing. It's a different energy.
Well, let me say this to you. I told somebody the other day after I heard. I haven't even followed them because when I found out, I just hadn't followed Alabama basketball much this year, so hardly any at all. Well, anyway, I'm not that interested in. I was, but anyway, I was before. But now, and then I thought, well, I told somebody, so it looks like. I heard or saw that the record up to about a week ago was not below average or average. I don't even know what 3-3 or 5-5 or something like that. I don't know what. Wasn't a winning record though. I said, well, I'm just the guy's another failure, I guess, and it didn't look good to me. So I said, here we go again with another average coach. I had no clue the guy looks like he's as good as he is, and tell him I said, congratulations. And let me say this, Peter. I literally pulled. I've never pulled for Auburn in my life. I was just pulling, and Finebaum knows, I was pulling as hard as I can pull, as any Auburn fan could pull in that semifinal, in that Final Four, where they should have won that last game against Virginia, wasn't it? And they lost. Yep. I was pulling for them to win it all. I thought they had the most fabulous, most exciting team I've ever seen, really, in college last year. So who did they lose to where they just become not as good as they were, not near as good, obviously, as they were last year.
No, but that's the credit. Like, I don't want to talk about how they lost. I mean, obviously, they lose Bryce Brown, they lose Jared Harper. But
what players from last year did they lose?
But Bryce Brown and Jared Harper were by far the best two guys.
Are they gone?
And Chume Okeke is gone as well too. But I got to run because we're up against the break. But we're going to talk to Coach Nate Oates about that here in about 15 minutes.
Thing, Peter, hold on. Is that game going to be replayed?
I would assume it will be. It sure as heck needs to be. I would check SECSports.com for it.
Is it on SEC Network?
I would double check and make sure. I do not have the local listings available.
Give me an announcement on the air. I want to hear it.
I would tell you what. Like I said, it was 83-64. I can't do my professional broadcasting voice, but I would tell you this again. It wasn't just a whipping; it was a whooping, and that's the reason why Nate Oates is excited.
I want to see it on replay. What about? Find out if you can. Tell me when it's going to be on again on replay.
Jim, I tell you what, I will look it up only for you. My New Year's resolution was to love every moment in life, and for you, I will look it up and I will tweet you. How about that?
Thank you very much.
Jim in Tuscaloosa, everybody. Thanks for the phone call. He will be joining us. Nate Oates will do it. And honestly, it was just great defense. They shut down Javon McCormick. Samir Dowdy only had 6 points early in that game. And all of a sudden, you could tell when the crowd was getting into it, it was a difference maker. And now, same thing that happened in Colonial Life Arena last night. South Carolina had a home court advantage. LSU's starting to get a home court advantage. And a lot of that is because of what Kentucky has brought to this conference and what Bruce Pearl brought down to Auburn, is that the fans are realizing basketball is here to stay in the SEC. And by the way, it's wide open this year. More of your phone calls coming up next on a wide open version of the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns, you can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Welcome back to Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Paul Finebaum. And you guys know, over my years of hosting this show, anytime I can take a shot at Greg McElroy, I choose to do it. But this time it's actually a legit reason. If I'm not mistaken, we were supposed to have the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nate Oates, on this program. Is that not factually correct, Brams and Coobs?
That is correct, and we still will.
Right. We will be having him on a phone call.
Not in the original fashion that we planned to.
Right. The original fashion was to be 3:30 Eastern. He was going to be doing a television hit. Like,
correct.
There's the television monitor. He looks at me.
Right.
We ask these questions. It's great video.
We have the camera on campus that they use down there.
Now, why has that changed, Brams? Could you tell the dear people about this?
Well, I'm looking up right now, and I'm watching Greg McElroy.
Yes.
We're watching
in the Bureau Cam room.
That Nate Oates would have been using right around this time.
And basically saying, I'm not leaving.
So
he's taping something on some other show.
He legit. So that's what McElroy is doing right now.
There he is. It's live. You are looking live.
You are looking
this was
live,
supposed to be Nate Oates.
This is McElroy. Let's pretend like what he's saying. So obviously, Peter Burns is a much better looking and a much more accomplished broadcaster than I am, don't you think? Hey, Greg.
All right.
No. What?
We don't, he doesn't know we're watching there, by the way. That was a little voyeuristic moment. Sorry, G Money Mac.
That's the last time I ever want to pick in on Greg McElroy in a voyeuristic way. I'll be
right. I mean, that could have been dangerous. We
you never know if he's
it's
going to flip a
taping right
bird or
now.
something.
Yeah. He's like, oh, you guys are fools.
By the way, we have these television pods. I want to have that 30 seconds that we just had McElroy on air. And I want to replay that in every television pod. And every single time we come back, we're going to fake a conversation that Greg McElroy is going to have.
What's he talking about?
Yeah.
I like that.
Actually,
it's a great point. We could just mouth over.
Yeah.
It's like bad lip reading.
Yeah.
Bad lip reading.
Yeah, you want to know why I think Brand? Yeah, I mean, seriously, guy.
He's answering now. Let's get it. We can
really,
do bad lip reading real quick.
If you think about it, I'm just like Tua. Tua's career, my career.
Tua's career was just a little bit less than my career. I won the national championship for a whole season.
We will have Nate Oates, top of the hour, on the phone. Can't wait.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, back to the Paul Finebaum Show here. I am Peter Burns. We've been having some fun at Greg McElroy's expense. When you can do that, you absolutely take an opportunity to do such. We're going to be joined by Nate Oates, the head coach of Alabama Crimson Tide, who they had a whooping of Auburn yesterday, 83-64. He's going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes. But let's go ahead and get your phone calls right now. PA is in Texas. What's happening, PA?
Well, I just got a little upset. Blood pressure went up a little bit when that gentleman, Alabama fan from, I believe he's from north of Baton Rouge is where he said he was from.
Yeah, I think he said kind of Shreveport area, northern Louisiana. That's correct.
Okay. Well, Alabama, we all are reminded daily of how much Alabama's done in football. We all know how many championships they've won. We're reminded daily. And everybody in the SEC, I'm a Texas Longhorn fan, so I don't have a dog in this fight.
I'm sorry to hear that, PA. Are you okay?
How great Alabama is. Let LSU have their moment. I mean, it's not, you don't have to come on and start talking about how great Alabama is in basketball. We beat Auburn last night, this and that. How many national championships we have versus how many LSU has. How many times we've beaten LSU the past 20 years and since Nick Saban arrived. Let LSU go. Let them have their moment in the sunshine. Let them have they earned it. They deserve it. And 15-0 has never been done before. Many of the things that LSU did this year has never been done before. And believe me, I am no LSU fan, but just let them have their time in the sunshine. That's all I ask Alabama fans.
PA, thank you for the phone call, my friend. And I would tell you this, they're also looking forward to having Sam Ehlinger back in Austin next year for the Longhorns. Remember, Texas is going to be making the trip to Baton Rouge, and that's one of the big-time non-conference games to circle coming up next year. Let's go to Louisiana. We head to Chris. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Paul. Paul. Hey, Peter, I just want to tell you, I've always enjoyed watching you on your show, and you and Tony, and so it's just great to talk
to a fellow Louisianan. And what a nice comment that what is his name, PA?
Yeah, PA was saying LSU fans enjoy it, man. I think, Chris, that's fair. LSU fans know to enjoy a little football and food and family, to say the least.
Exactly. I thought that was really a class. What he said was about, why does Alabama want to, this has been the greatest season of all time, and we know Nick Saban is great, and we know where Alabama is going to be. But it's kind of funny, Tony. Peter. I get you all mixed up. Peter, it's kind of funny that he mentioned that if you want to compare Nick Saban about what we're going to do, he said we wouldn't win but 8 games or 9. Well, go back and compare what Nick Saban did at LSU after he won the national championship. He didn't go out and win the SEC the next year. He didn't go out and have a fantastic year. I think we might have only won 8 or 9 games, and that's with Nick Saban.
LSU was 9-3 coming off after the national championship game back in 2003, where they won it in New Orleans.
Great. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Peter, because that's going ahead. That's telling it. All right, we're not comparing, Nick Saban after he's been at Alabama for 10 years. We're talking about what did he do his 4th year, and so I think Coach O, can match that. He's already beat Nick Saban as far as his tenure and the games he's won at LSU in the same length of time that Coach Saban won. And so I think you need to remember that. And like I say, what difference does it make? You better not worry about LSU next year. You better worry about Auburn and everybody else, because every team in the SEC is going to be better next year, except for LSU. And that's because you can't be better than we were this year. So we're not going to be as good as we were this year for sure. And sure, we've got 7 players leaving, probably 4 more, and that's going to be tough to replace. And, I know we're not going to be as good. And, it's kind of like this, Paul. Me and you, Peter, can talk about that. But, we don't like somebody else telling us that.
That's right. I would say, Chris, thank you for the phone call, because I'm up against the break. And you're right. But here's the big thing for LSU. They didn't capitalize in 2007. Les Miles did not capitalize on a national championship game. In fact, kind of just said, all right, well, the players will just show up now. I will tell you this, Ed Orgeron has spent every waking moment on phone calls that he can make to recruits to make sure what happened in 2007 of LSU kind of falling behind and not capitalizing on a national championship isn't going to help. And that's, again, you're going to learn a lot about what Nick Saban has done at Alabama with what happens with LSU in the next couple of years. Because now everybody's going to be coming for that crown. 7 guys, probably Caleb Vaughn and even Thaddeus Moss are going to be leaving. Dave Aranda's probably going to Baylor. Joe Brady already lost. What are you going to do? Because guess what? If you want to be Alabama, you compete for a national championship next year. You don't go 8-4. Can the Tigers do that? We'll talk more about it coming up in the next hour. Nate Oates, Alabama head coach.